Welcome, everyone. I am Bob Wurzelbacher, the director of the Respect Life Office for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, and this is our video podcast series that we call Being Pro-Life. Each month, we'll discuss a different topic in the Respect Life arena. We'll hear a personal story from someone deeply affected by that issue. And finally, we'll share ways that you can get involved. National Marriage Week happens this month, and this month is also National Marriage Month or National Wedding Month. So we're having a special episode on marriage. As always, we have a special guest. Will you please introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me, Bob. I appreciate it. My name is Greg Schutte, and I'm the director of Marriage Works Ohio up in Dayton, Ohio, which is a department of the Elizabeth New Life Center. And been working here for over 14 years.
Great, Greg. So let's talk about Marriage Works Ohio. What is that, and how does it help?
Sure. Marriage Works Ohio stemmed out of the Elizabeth New Life Center. And the Elizabeth New Life Center is a pro-life women's resource center for women who are in crisis. And so many years back, I think it was around 2004, Vivian, who is the executive director, had this idea of not just saving babies, but how do we prevent women from being in crisis in the first place? Right. And so she reached out to get these grants to do work in our high schools. And so one of the things that we do is we go out into the high school and teach youth about healthy relationships, how to save sex for marriage, and the repercussions from making bad choices in their relationships. And then back in 2006, she applied for a national grant, and we got one of the third largest in the United States to build what's now Marriage Works Ohio. And the focus of what we do here is to help people at all stages with their relationships. So like I said, part of what we do is working with youth in high schools. I work with couples who are dating, trying to figure out should they get married or not. I work with couples who are getting ready for marriage and those who are married and in distress. So kind of run the whole gamut of help for people. In doing so, we also run classes as well as provide marriage therapy.
So Greg, you started out giving talks to high school kids, but now you work with people who are dating, people who are getting ready to get married, people who are married. Of course, obviously the official people who are Catholic and got married know that there are classes, right, that you have to take through the Archdiocese for that. Are you officially associated with that, or?
I have been working with the Archdiocese for the pre-Cana. I actually started doing some pre-Cana with a few of the different parishes up north, like up in Russia, Ohio. Okay. We are now, me and my wife are doing some of the pre-Cana. In fact, we have one coming up in 2 days here where we're going to be speaking at the pre-Cana class. And I love doing that because, let me just say it this way, when you're working and doing therapy with clients who are really struggling in their marriage and you see kind of that bad state, it's nice to work with people before they get married to really help them go into marriage in a good way.
Preparing a couple who's planning on getting married to prepare well for marriage. And then there's, if you will, helping them to realize they probably shouldn't get married in the first place.
Yeah.
Do you have some experience with that second one? Like, look, you really need to think about not getting married. And has your program helped with that?
Yeah, in fact, that's a great question, because that's something that a lot of the people that used to teach for us, it's a struggle for them, because our goal is not to jump right to, especially when people are married, to, saying you need to separate, you need to get a divorce. We really want to dig in. But I've had to help them understand, look, if people are not married yet and this is really toxic and it's really bad, or they haven't worked through some things, sometimes the best thing we can do for people is say, don't get married, or at least don't get married right now. Let's work with you and see if we can get a clear picture. Because a lot of people, they lead with their heart and they don't stop to think with their head as far as how to really balance this relationship. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that I do often. The other one is, I know that some people struggle with counseling people who are cohabitating, because in our faith, that's not good. It's not healthy. But what I have found is that I like working with them, because then I can educate them on the destructiveness of living together and how that works against the health of their relationship now, and if they do end up getting married. So sometimes in doing that, you see people going, yeah, this isn't a good relationship. Maybe we need to rethink this. And yeah, we see that as a success.
You brought up cohabitation. There's a lot of people out there that think cohabitating is a terrific idea, because you learn about the person you plan on married, just what we're talking about. And you might realize, oh, I shouldn't marry this person. It's good to live together for a while first. And think about it. Why is that not a good idea for getting ready for marriage?
Well, first of all, they have done over 30 years of studying of this and have shown that people who are living together have higher rates of abuse, mental illness, higher rates of different dysfunctions because of this, and their children aren't doing as well. So some of the studies is that. But the other thing that I like to talk to people about is I ask them, how do you and can you practice permanency? And the answer is no, you can't practice permanency. It is that choice that we make at some point in our relationship to say, you are the one that I want, and I want to commit to this for the rest of my life. The problem with living together is a lot of people don't make a decision, they kind of slide into it. And it's that sliding into it that's the difficult. So it may be, we're spending a lot of time and, well, I just happen to spend the night tonight. And then, well, I leave some clothes over there. And then eventually I move more stuff in. Then I decide, well, why don't we just live together? And I never make a conscious decision to, that you're the one for me. So we're not practicing permanency. What people are doing is practicing divorce, because the mindset is, let's try this. Let's see if it works. And if it doesn't, well, I'll go my way, you go yours. And that's not a commitment. And then the difficulty is when they decide, at what point do we make that switch and we're now going to get married? The problem is making that switch in our brain. And so that's why they've shown that people who live together, and it's really more so that if you live together with one person prior to marriage, that the divorce rate goes up. It's now 65% chance that your marriage won't work. If you live with two people prior to getting married, it goes up to 75%. And if you live with three or more people before you end up marrying the one person that you want to be with, now you have an 85% chance of divorce. And so this is all the research that's out there, but a lot of it has to do with that you can't practice permanency. And there's something to this whole realm of making a commitment, sticking to it, and then working it out through the difficulties.
Wow, that's very interesting, those stats. Do we have a kind of a crisis, if you will, of that among people even who try to or want to get married in the Catholic Church?
Yeah. In fact, I think the last I heard is it's somewhere up around 75% of youth or young people or people, that are in relationship are living together prior to marriage. So it's really high, which is creating part of the crisis that we're in right now, where people are struggling with that whole realm of commitment and staying married and really working through the issues versus just saying, I'm not happy anymore. I'm done. I'm out of here.
Now, let's say we're talking about a couple who is married. So now we're committed. We really want to make this work out. What are these common problems that couples have in marriage that they might seek marriage works?
One of the first things that people see is we don't know how to communicate. Help us with communication. And that's where their focus is, just help us communicate. And I don't jump there right away because I start digging in to realize that there's more foundational issues that are more the problem. So to me, one of the most foundational is a lack of time for one another. I often say people don't fall out of love. They first fall out of knowing each other. And why is that? Because if you think about it, before marriage, we spend a lot of time getting to know one another. We put a lot of effort into it. We're on the phone all the time. We're really trying to win each other over. But then in marriage, for some reason, we start letting life take over. We have kids, we have jobs, we have taxes, we have housework, and then we don't spend time talking. A lot of times when people come in for therapy, that's my first question. How much time do you have for each other every day? And, inevitably, it's, well, we don't have time for each other. I'm working this many hours. She's working this many hours. I ask, when's the last time you've been on a date? And many people are some are reaching back years to their last date. And I'm like, okay, this is not a good thing. So that time factor. And then even if I teach you good communication skills, if you don't have the time for one another, that breaks it down. So poor communication, lack of time for one another, a lack of understanding each other's needs. One of the things that we talk about, it's titled Building a Eucharistic Marriage. And part of that is that our marriage is centered on the Eucharist and going to Mass and receiving Christ. But the other part of it is being Eucharistic to one another. And I often use this analogy of feeding one another. And what happens is people lose sight of the needs of their spouse because we don't have time, we're not listening, and we forget or we lose track of how to feed one another. And so often people come into therapy and their struggle is their needs aren't getting met. And I use this now, I'll never forget, this is my favorite story that I use all the time. I had this one couple that came into therapy. They were going back and forth. You didn't do this. Well, you didn't do that. They went all the way back to their marriage day of things that they weren't doing for each other. So I said, time out, hold on a second. If I gave you the opportunity right now to starve each other to death, would you do it? And they looked at me like, we're paying you for what? I said, no, just go with me on this one.
Go with me, right?
Yeah, and they're like, no, we wouldn't do that. That's horrible. That's the worst thing you can do. We still love each other. And I said, but that's exactly what's happening here. You're emotionally starving one another. You have this need. You're hoping that your helpmate is going to help you get that need met, and it's not happening. And so the stress goes higher and higher, and we start to get to where we demand, when are you going to help me out? I can't do this alone. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. And in a sense, marriages start to emotionally starve, and that's where things really start to break down. So this understanding of needs, a few other things I would say, a lack of gentleness that people have in their marriage. We have expectations, and we're not very patient with one another when we make mistakes. I would say selfishness. And then two other big ones, a lack of gratitude. And when you take each other for granted, and it's just, you expect them to do, cook for me and clean and all this, and we're not stopping to say, hey, thanks, I really appreciate that. It really starts to wear on us. And then the last one, probably the most important, is a lack of prayer. People are not praying together as couples. And that is one of the most vital things to really tap into the grace of God for our marriage, because our marriage sacrament has so many graces that are available to us, and many people aren't asking. Those are some of the real key things that I see that are kind of primary in the beginning. And then it gets to bigger and uglier things when these things get out of control.
What do you look for in your marriage that says, okay, I need to seek out some help because this is going on?
Well, often I say, don't wait too long. It's a common frustration that I often, hear when a woman calls for help. Usually we've got some opportunity to really help that couple, because women kind of see problems early on and they try and do something. But when a guy usually calls us, it's pretty bad at that point. And I'm not sure why people wait so long. But my encouragement is, don't wait. It doesn't mean that you have to jump into therapy right away. I would say whenever you get stuck in an area of disagreement, seek others that can help kind of guide you in this. It could be a family member that you trust. It could be a friend that you trust, even starting there. But after the first child or second child, I always encourage people to think about going to a marriage enrichment course or class, because at that point you start seeing roles change, and a lot of people start to feel left out, feel like the husband often feels like they're not number one anymore because of the child. And it's a good time at that point to just rediscover and kind of figure out how the roles are going to play out at this point. So that's another milestone that I say. But the third is when you feel like communication is getting you nowhere, you're getting stuck in a certain area and you feel like you're burying it under the rug, that's the time to start seeking out even therapy, because that's the beauty of what I do. A lot of people come and they want to point blame at each other. And I quickly tell them, look, I'm not going to sit here and try and figure out who's more to blame. It takes two to tango. What I want to help you figure out is, what are the patterns that are getting you stuck, so that you can make choices to get unstuck and to change those patterns. So that's where I say, don't wait too long. Think about seeking help and not just burying stuff under the rug and allowing these little things, because they eventually start to build up and really start to tear us apart.
So Greg, you talked a little bit about therapy, but Marriage Works does other things as well. So what else do you do?
Sure. One of my favorites is teaching classes. We have different classes for all those in need. So we have some that are more secular, because we work with the general population. We have some Christian-based courses that are focused for just people who want more of that Christian background, the biblical themes. And then also I've written a marriage program called Discovering Our Deepest Desire, which is a 12-week course, but we also have a 7-week version of that called Building a Eucharistic Marriage. And these are classes that we have in the different parishes. Right now, we're running quite a few down in the Cincinnati area. And the nice thing about a marriage course versus therapy is that it gives you the opportunity to connect with other people. And I think too often marriages die in the shadows of their home because we're afraid to go, we're afraid to seek help. But the other thing is that sometimes we feel like we're the only one experiencing this, or we don't realize how other people are struggling with that. And that's the neat thing about going to a class, is you start to get other people's perspective and other people chiming in saying, yeah, we're struggling with this too. And then from these classes, we encourage a lot of couples to go on to what we call marriage support circles. So a lot of these couples that are getting to know each other, supporting each other as they're learning in class and building their own marriage, go on to once a month meet as couples and continue that journey of exploring more in their marriage. So the classes are one. We have a mentor that works with individuals or couples on an individual basis. And those are really the primary classes that we have. So the courses are for pre-marriage and also married couples.
Do you need to be in a space where you really feel like your marriage is in trouble? Or are these same classes for, I would just love to see my marriage be better?
It just depends on the depth of problems, because sometimes if there's a deeper issue like infidelity, unrecognized or untreated addictions to pornography, alcohol, some of those things are going to require more of a therapeutic or therapy intervention. But these classes are for people who their marriage is going fine, but they just want to go deeper. But it's also there for people who are struggling. The Discovering Our Deepest Desire, I also call it the DOD program. One of the things that's built into it is there's a therapeutic model for change. And this is what couples need, is kind of a path for whenever we have a problem, here's the steps to really walk through that and to come out on the other side, understanding more what needs to be changed and doing the change. So if people work it and implement it and put some of that into practice. In fact, we've had a few people that come into the class that really, literally, it was their last ditch effort. They were on the brink of divorce and they said, we're going to give it one more try here. And something about the course really resonated with them. And many of them are doing a lot better.
So if people want to find out what's the schedule of these courses, maybe it's not at their parish, they have no idea where the nearest one is. They're like maybe a website or something that will give us that schedule, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So there's two different websites I would encourage. One is our MarriageWorks website, and that's trustmarriage.com.
Okay. I have it up on the screen, trustmarriage.com.
Yep.
Kind of describe it for people who are listening on the podcast, and we can show it for people who are watching the video.
Yep. So as you're scrolling down there, you'll see right there a few of our classes. We have classes for people who are married and engaged. The state-funded classes, those are for people who are low income and have a child in the home. And so we have state funds to actually cover the cost of them being able to come in. And that's for couples who are looking for a class for their marriage, or if they're dating and they're trying to work through issues and possibly get married. The dating classes, we teach from a book called How to Avoid Falling for a Jerk or Jerkette. It's a great book, but it's also a great course. So we help couples who are dating. Then down to the Christian and the Catholic-based courses, we have the ability to train couples at a church to be able to run these. And I teach some of these in the different courses. And so this right here, what you're seeing, this one also links you to our other website, which is strictly for the Catholic program. And this is the Discovering Our Deepest Desire program for the Catholic Church. We've got a course that I'm running actively right now at St. Margaret of York. We have one at St. Gertrude with, I think we're going to actually push back right now because there's been some difficulties with all of COVID. And then the next one we have is down at Our Lady of the Rosary, and that's in the Winton Woods area. This is going to be their first time. And then also we have some coming up here in Dayton soon. We're working with Incarnation Parish and also with Wright Pat Air Force Base. So those will be getting up there soon.
Okay, so you can find that link through the trustmarriage.com website, or you can go directly to the Catholic schedule at ourdeepestdesire.com. Ourdeepestdesire.com. If you find something coming up that is at a place close to you, that's great. But what if you want to bring it to your own parish, for example, and it's not there?
Yeah, well, that's where I encourage people to give me a call. And our number here is 937 262 7010, 937 262 7010. And just give me a call, because one of the things that we can do is talk with you and come up with a plan for how we can sit down with your pastor. Maybe if there's a marriage team already put together, we can sit down with them and present what we offer here and let them know a little bit more of how we can bring it to their church, and then the options. Some, if it's local, some churches like the ones that you saw on there are actually paying for me to come down and teach the course. And then I'm also working with the Kalamazoo Diocese up in Michigan, where I've gone up there and trained couples to actually teach the course. So we can train you. And right now we're also working on an online training to make it a lot easier for people. And hopefully we'll have that in a month or two.
In terms of contacting you, again, on those websites already mentioned, ourdeepestdesire.com or trustmarriage.com, you go to the contact, there's a contact us link. And if you click on that, you can find that phone number or your email. Are there other tips besides what we already talked about that might mention, okay, you should start with a class, or maybe you should go directly to therapy, or what's your advice on that kind of thing for couples?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think what I see is a lot of people want to jump to therapy right away. They feel like my situation is unique. I need the highest level. People want to bypass even a mentor. And I really encourage people sometimes start at that lower level and see if that helps, because sometimes it's less intrusive. It creates more of a habit of like a date night. And for, if you're dealing with a spouse that therapy, I ain't talking to a shrink. And again, how we even couch the class, it's not come to marriage enrichment to fix your marriage. It's come to a date night and rediscover your spouse. And what I've found is when people start coming to these classes, we're not picking on anybody. And a lot of guys really struggle with this because they feel like they're going to get picked on in these classes, but they come and they realize it's a great discussion. We have fun with that.
Picked on, I mean, people think that they're going to go, oh, you're such a horrible husband because you do this, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And that happens, unfortunately, because the only thing I can think here is that women are more articulate and they remember everything. And so sometimes they're easy to convince you that their way is right. And a lot of times a guy will be in my office going, I don't remember what I said. I don't, and so you just start feeling like he's in the wrong and she's in the right. I've had to really over the years train myself to go, hold on, stop. Takes two to tango. Let's listen to the stories, because what you find is there's hurt on both sides. There is struggle on both sides. They're both playing out these patterns that are creating the difficulty. And I think that's what's helpful for a lot of these couples is when they see, I'm not here to attack you. I'm not here to blame you, but I'm here to try and help you figure out what's not working. What's at the root of this? And when you start to see that he has needs, she has needs, and they start feeding one another, it's really cool. So I would say, yes, start at that lower level. And then if it's just not helping and you're not able to do the homework and follow through with it, then step up to the next and maybe go to a mentor or go to therapy.
The idea of the wife saying, but I told you this, I said that, and me going, I wish we had it on video because I do not remember you ever telling me that. That happens a lot.
Well, and I'll tell you that I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's one of the things that we teach in the course that to me has always been an eye opener, is how men and women's brains work and how they work differently when it comes to stress and all of that. And men have this thing called a nothing box. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but basically men like to deal with one thing at a time. We have boxes for everything. This is metaphorical. Box for our wife, box for our kids, box for our dog, box for our mother-in-law somewhere in the basement, a box for all these different things, and we like to deal with one thing at a time. Well, we have this one box that has nothing in it. What does that mean? Men, when we have low level stress, we can, and they've shown this on brain scans, can actually shut down one side of our brain. The blood flows to the other. We shut down and we do something that seems kind of mindless, like take a nap, stare at the TV, go pound nails somewhere. And it's part of dealing with the stress. The problem is men tend to stay there too long. So the women deal with stress by talking because they don't have that nothing box because their brain is like a big ball of wire. Everything's connected to everything. They feel like they have a never-ending to-do list. So think about that. If a wife has a never-ending to-do list, husband needs time to do nothing, and she sees him doing nothing, she's going to get ticked off, right? Because she can think of 5 things that he can do. The other part of that is sometimes women will try to talk to us when our brain is actually shut down and we're in that nothing box. And so we can't often retain the things that they're telling us. That's just one thing, but sometimes it's also, are we paying attention? Are we being intentional? And sometimes that doesn't happen.
I've responded with because it's been so long. It happens so often, right? Like, was I looking at you? Did you call my attention or did you say it when you were walking across the room? Because I can believe if you said it when I was doing something else, I wouldn't even have heard it. But was I facing you? Were we? Because
right.
I mean, so we actually talked about it, and that's a whole different level. Were you talking to the kids and you assumed that I was listening? Who knows? But anyway, it's very interesting. There's science involved here, right? That men actually behave this way, and that all that can be a part of it. Can we go back a little bit? So we offer help to people who are dating, or even people who aren't even necessarily dating. Just you're talking to people about chastity, I suppose, right? And not living and things like that. So if they're not at your school, is there a way for someone to send their teenager to a class? So that's only in schools.
Well, right now, because we have a grant to do that work, it's mostly in schools. We do some in detention centers. We have done some of this at churches and for homeschool groups, but they've commissioned us to do that outside of the grant. So yeah, people can bring this to their church. We haven't had a lot of that. The course that we've created called Go for the Gold. Now, the Go for the Gold program is not religious based, but nothing in it goes against faith. So what's cool about it is it's not like abstinence education where we're telling you what's best to save sex for marriage, and some of the repercussions if you don't. Whereas in Go for the Gold, we take a different approach. We look at what it means to have a healthy relationship. What are things that you can do that can be unhealthy to your relationship? And then get people to think about it and wrestle with it. So we talk about boundaries and having boundaries, and who do you let in those, boundary rings that you have? You just let any stranger come in and know all your secrets? No. And yet a lot of kids are doing that by putting everything out on Facebook. So they're learning how to, keep those boundaries. We teach them about teen date violence and how to prevent that. We talk about emotional grooming. And this is one that a lot of kids see, but they don't know how to name it. And so we talk about how kids groom one another towards sex and how they groom one another by, trying to get compliments and trying to pressure them. And so there's like 12 of these that we go through with them. And that's the goal of that program, is just to give them information, show them what's healthy, talk about what are the repercussions if you have sex that can happen, and really get them to think again, because what they do today is going to affect future relationships and the rest of their life.
So, Greg, in terms of that stat you had about people who live together, do you have a stat like that? And if you've been intimate with this many people prior to marriage, you're more likely to end up in divorce. Are there stats like that you have readily available?
There's some of those that are out there, but some of the kids are not at that point. One of the things that we do actually but really address is this whole concept of the whole hookup culture. And what's neat about what we have is we have this resource. It's a book called Hooked, Hooked. And we have a culture right now that really thinks that it's okay and there's nothing wrong with just hooking up, having sex outside of marriage, and we can do it without any repercussions. And so instead of hitting kids with statistics, a lot of them don't care or they don't believe it. So the beauty of this book that we use, it talks about the actual brain science of sex and how you can't avoid the effects of it. So when you have intimate connection with another person, of more than 20 seconds, even just hugging, your brain starts to release neurochemicals. And when you have sex, your brain floods with it and it creates this bonding. For women, they release what's called oxytocin. And for men, we release vasopressin. We love to use this information because the kids talking, this is biology. So you might not like the statistics, but this is showing actually how your brain starts to bond you with another person. And when you bond and break and bond and break and bond and break, it really starts to have an effect on your ability to eventually have that strong bonding relationship with that one person that you want to be with the rest of your life. Kids really get this one. This is one that resonates with them. And I would encourage, parents, once your kids are in their teen years, to read this. It's a little heavy at times, but it's a great read.
Okay, so Hooked, New Science on How Casual Sex is Affecting Our Children from 2008. I've learned that if you simply search the word hooked, there are a lot of books.
Yeah, be careful, because I'm sure that
So Hooked, New Science on How Casual Sex is Affecting Our Children from 2008 by Joe McElhaney and Frida Bush. Well, we're almost out of time here, but thank you so much for spending time with us. Take care. Anything else real quick that you thought, make sure I wanted to say this before we go?
My biggest thing is don't wait too long to work on your marriage. Make sure that you're doing something every day to build up your marriage. One of my favorite things is what I call check-in time. Make sure that when you get home from work, that you're checking in with one another, not just running to your nothing box, not just running to the computer, but you're checking with one another. What are your needs and how can I help you? And if things are going great, we connect and then we go do the projects that we need to. But if not, then we're listening. Okay, how can I help you with this? Do you need me to take this over? Help with the kids? If you do that every day, you start avoiding those big problems that build up that really create difficulty. So make time for one another, go on dates, and keep that communication flowing.
Well, thanks for talking with us today about Marriage Works, about the importance of marriage in our society today and in the pro-life movement, and how we can all work to improve our own marriage and those in our parish community. So thanks for spending time with us today.
But I appreciate this time because I think what you're doing with all of this is great, Bob, and keep up the fight for life and for the family, and, appreciate all that.
Now, I want to thank all our viewers and listeners for tuning in on this episode of our Being Pro-Life series. Head to the website to view more resources talked about in this episode at www.catholicaoc.org/beingprolife. Thanks again for joining us today. I look forward to being with you next time.